Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Indie Hour. If this is your first time joining us, this is a series where we, as the GMG patrons, go through a curated list of their own suggestions and various indie games I have scraped together from the internet. Try and throw a spotlight on great games you may have never heard of, for everything from small kitchen table games to big mass combat games, rank and flank games, skirmish games, spaceship games. We've had giant mecha games. We had a monster hunting game. We had a game where the clones of a dying civilization fail upwards. We've had many weird and different games in this series so far. But this week we have the patron pick AETHERPUNK28. And this is available through Wargames Vault. It was picked through a poll by the patrons, along with a variety of other fun games. I think Dead Gods was up there in the list this week. As well as Space Wreckers, two very fun games, and Sector Aelix has not been forgotten about. It was one of the top picks from the previous poll set, and a whole bunch of people in the comments have added it back on for next week. It is a crazy steampunk-style Gorka Morka. If you liked Bioshock Infinite, imagine a Bioshock Infinite miniature game where you fly around in weird floating space trucks across a giant floating world. So, yeah, tons of crazy stuff to go through here and lots of things to check out. So let's dive in and have a look at today's game, AETHERPUNK28. This is a skirmish game of post-apocalyptic wizards. That is that's obviously the log line here, by Jack Edwards, with some fantastic art by Bone Dust, Herrick Lilred, and Hannah Geisen. I think I'm pronouncing all those right, probably not. And this is a pay-as-you-want game on Wargames Vault. It is a best copper seller right now, and is a full-scale rulebook of wizards colleges basically marching to war against each other. The sort of theme here that I would elucidate is going to be Ralph Bakshi's Wizards. And if you don't remember what Ralph Bakshi's Wizards, first of all, it's the king of rotoscope. If you haven't watched the original Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit from Ralph Bakshi, and you want to see some unhinged animation from the late 70s, go check out Wizards. It's a wild ride. Or Fritz the Cat, also a wild ride. But this is like a doomed kind of quasi-militaristic world of wizards, and the various colleges are all fighting each other. In a time almost forgotten, the world was whole. From their seats at Avantir, the Council of Wizards shared their gift of magic with the world, founding the great magical colleges. It was a time of wonder, prosperity, and progress. In their hubris, the Council failed to consider the costs of their actions. They failed to realize that their powers were finite, until rather predictably it was too late, and they were too dependent on magic to function without it. With magic beginning to deteriorate, so did the bonds between the colleges. And now for nearly a century, bitter conflict, the Wizarding War still ranges. It's a little bit Howl's Moving Castle. The world has been shattered, and upon its twisted carcass, the colleges still vie for power. Erudite, the crystalline substance from which magic is distilled, has almost been completely depleted. Kind of reminds me of Dark Sun, which is a D&D setting from the early 90s that had a similar thing. It was basically a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting where the whole world had been destroyed by magic. They were these mage kings ruled all the various cities, and one of them was the dragon. There's only one dragon on the whole planet, and it's the apotheosis of this one wizard. But the idea was that all the magic would suck the life out of things. So it basically posited that magic required homeostasis, and the essence of magic is the life force in all things. So there was different types of wizards, some that would preserve and some that would despoil, and the despoilers would destroy the planet. This is the same kind of idea. Except without all the weird Brahm art. And basically, the bedraggled warbands trudging across a war-ravaged world fight over the scraps. A feral parody of the proud colleges they once were. Welcome to AETHERPUNK28. Lovely illustrations here. The lightheartedness of the illustrations beguiling or betraying the darkness within. AETHERPUNK28 is played on a board between 2x2 and 4x4 feet in size, or any variation therein. Players assemble a college of wizards, apprentices, and magical creatures to clash against those their opponent has in order to secure victory. Games of AETHERPUNK28 can be any size. We recommend a starting game to be about 50 shillings per side. Your wizard's about 5. Bigger units could be up to 20, like tanks and magical constructs. And therefore, a 50 shilling game, players begin with 5 erudite charges, and you get 1 per. So, like, erudite charges are basically your ability to cast spells, and they boost your stats too. For every 2 shillings not spent during college creation, the player may start the game with an extra charge, but they're finite. They don't come back. A game comprises of 5 rounds. Games begin with players arranging the board and rolling initiative on a d12. Now, the game uses a full suite of d4 to d12 polyhedral dice. They're also used for the stat lines for things and for doing tests. It is a basic dice pool test system. Every 6 is a success. So if you're really injured down to a d6 for a stat, you got to roll a 6 to succeed. But a 6 plus on a d12 is actually a greater than 50-50 chance of succeeding. The player who rolled the highest number places the first model and then goes for first in round one. Round first. What is wrong with me? In subsequent turns, players roll off and the player who activates the last model in the previous round loses the tie. So basically, if you went last in the last round, then you don't go first the next turn. Can't double activate. So I do like the way this rulebook's laid out. It's actually, again, laid out temporally. So the steps you would use to play the game. It might feel a bit weird from the writing point of view because missions come very early. It goes like concepts, core rules, setting up a game, then forced creation is afterwards. But the idea is like, understand what you're going to be doing, set the scene for what you're going to be doing, then put the forces into the scene. That's kind of the layout for this rulebook. Step 1, generate and allocate erudite. At the start of every turn, including the first, both colleges generate a single erudite charge, provided that their wizard is still alive. So you get 1 for free. You start with, in a 50-point game, 5. Start with the player who has the initiative. Players may then take it in turns to allocate a single charge to a model in their college in order to empower them, gaining the stat increases associated with their faction. This continues until one player decides not to allocate a charge. So, like, if you have 6 at the start of turn 1, you could give 2 out to your army, but save the last 4 for subsequent turns, because you only get 1 back per turn from your wizard being alive. And this continues until a player decides they're going to stop. And then issuing orders, step 2. Starting with the player who has priority, you go back and forth alternating between units, issuing orders. You get to issue 2 orders in any combination and execute them. So you can move, which is move your move stat. Charge, move your move stat towards the nearest enemy model, so you can come with an inch. Regular move, you can't come with an inch. Fire, models may make a ranged weapon attack with the weapon they're equipped with. Fight within melee, but only for an inch of the enemy. Cast for your wizards, unbind for your wizards, and an ongoing spell or empowerment. And then hunker down, models make themselves harder to hit. Those are your core actions for the game. Then your stats. So you have, it's the one thing I wish was here was an example stat line to show you guys. They do like the descending and ascending dice orders, but they don't give you an example stat until you get to forces later on. Movements and number, usually 6 inches. Melee, ranged, willpower, and defense are all dice stats. So it'll be the die you roll for melee attacks on a 6. Ranged, die you roll for that for when you shoot. Willpower is your hit points and also the dice you roll for casting, because willpower is your casting stat. And the more damage you get, the more your will drops. So if you had a well of D12, you effectively have D12, D10. So D12, so you have 1 down to D10, down to D8, down to D6, down to D4, and then down to 0. So you have 5 wounds effectively, because every time you take a damage, you drop a dice stat and your willpower. And then your defense, kind of your armor save, is a dice you roll for that. When a rule states increase or decrease of 1 or more, you go up and down the steps. And then checks, when making any form of check, a stat check of a 6 plus a success. So you can't actually succeed on a D4, but it still counts as like an extra wound left for your willpower. Moves, you standard rules for moving, like straight lines for charging. Fire gun, you make a range check, so you pick your weapon, you roll a number of dice equal to your weapon's dice pool, trying to use the dice value of your range stat. For each success, the enemy must make a defense skill check, decreasing their willpower bar for each failure. So you make, basically you're forcing defense checks every time you succeed in your pool. So it's opposed dice pools. And then the dice value of your willpower drops for each one. Can't fire when you're melee. Fight has to be within 1 inch. Models make 1 attack in melee. For every success, the enemy model must make a defense check. Again, it's a different weapon class. So there's inside and outside of 1 inch. And then cast, as an action, a wizard can cast any spell from the list of general spells or their faction-specific spells. To cast a spell, remove the marked number of erudite charges from your college's pool and follow the instructions on the spell. And then unbind, you can attempt to make a willpower check to basically spend the same number of erudite charges as the spell cost to cast. And then if you get equal or higher on a contested willpower check, so you and your opponent both roll off for will, you'll cancel the one. And if you perform a surge, you can use to cancel a spell being cast. Hunker down, you can increase your defense by 1. So 1 dice up. So like if my defense was a D4, it'd go to a D6. If it was a D6, it would go to a D8, D8 to D10, and on. Surges. Once per turn, when a model is selected as the target of an attack, range or melee can make a surge action. This is kind of like an infinity version of an ARO. You're counteracting. Surge actions are either passive or active. Each model has a passive surge action they can perform when they need to do a check. However, players may decide to attempt an active surge, and when you do this, you can perform any action from the action list. So like a passive surge could be like this unit's able to make a move when someone attacks them. But the active one means that if you make a willpower check and then pass, you just roll single dice versus your willpower. If you get a 6+, you pass. Do any action you want instead. But you can only do that once per turn per unit. And then we get the various terrain rules, so like cover, being behind a barricade, troublesome, it halves your movement, treacherous, make a willpower check for them at the end of their move, and if they fail, their willpower goes down by 1. They take an injury, basically. And things can have multiple versions of it. So you could have cover that's troublesome. You could have treacherous barricades, right? Like imagine like barrels with like spikes stuck in them. And that's the core mechanic. So nice, simple core mechanic, right? Opposing dice pool. You're using scaling dice for your stats. It's a grand total of 4 pages for the core rules. And then we're into missions. I'm going to give you the first one as an example. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 presented missions in here. We'll go through Blitzkrieg as the example mission. So if you have a 9-inch deployment zone, 18 inches in between, rumors of an erudite deposit have been drawn to the attention of 2 colleges who are now faced with one another. With their prizes close to hand, there's little option but to snatch up what they can, kill who they must, and then flee. It's like a straight-up fight. Set up anything between a 2x2 and a 4x4 board. An 18-inch strip should run from one side to the other, which is your no man's land. Place areas of troublesome, dangerous, and covering terrain along no man's land. So your deployment zone doesn't have to have cover in it, but you have to have at least some stuff in there. Place 3 erudite counters. This is the mineral deposit, the magical mineral they're fighting over. The unobtainium, if you will. One must be placed in the center of the battlefield. Once an issue has been placed or rolled, you alternate placing deposits no closer than 6 to the deployment zone of another deposit. So basically anywhere not within 6 of the middle or someone's deployment zone. And then certain with the player that won the initiative, players take turns placing a single miniature in their deployment zone outside of no man's land. And victory is the side that controls the most erudite at the end of the game is the winner. It may take control of your erudite deposits by having more shillings worth of models within an inch, so the more points you have next to it. At the cost of a single action, a model may excavate the deposit. They're moved from the model that excavated it until the model is removed or used in action. Drop deposits can be picked up as a single action. Models carrying erudite may not make more than 1 move action during their activation. So you can pick up and move the objectives by digging them up. And that's it. You have to just control the most at the end of the game. Lots of variation here. The excavator, there's like a giant machine. An ancient relic lies rusted and barely functional at the apex of an old mine. Trying to like get it activated to get more erudite. Over the top, it's 2 like trench systems where you're fighting through. The War of Attrition. This is just like a grinder. Ruse de Guerre. Scavenging is always up for it's almost the whatchamacallit, the treasure hunt mission from Mordheim, where you're like looking through things, trying to find them. Echelon, an errant release of magical energy prevents an excellent opportunity to try and snap up some valuable resources. While the storm rages on, it chases off the majority of the scavengers. It's the perfect time to swoop in and secure it. So an arcane storm is hitting things with bolts of lightning while you're playing the game. Perfidy, this is a sneak attack basically, where like you're trying to have a parlay and then the fight breaks out. Parthian shot, it's a corner to corner mission. Revetting with an ancient tower in the middle. It's a watchtower mission. Hedgehog. I don't know the theme for this one. It's got random events basically. Booby traps. Are you touching my stuff? Are they touching my stuff? They are touching my stuff. And then treasure. Add an area to treasure your college's pool. Start the round in which a model is in the enemy deployment zone. They must make a willpower check. If failed, roll a d4 and consult the table below. Basically, like, stuff starts going crazy. And then we get our college rosters. So these are the core examples of your primary, which is your wizard that everybody has, and then all the generic units, and the factions will have separate units that are different. So in this one, you always have to have a wizard. He's got a 6-inch move. He rolls a d6 for melee. His range skill is d6. His willpower is 12 and his defense is 6. The one thing I don't understand in here is you can increase their willpower by 1. You can't go higher than d12. So that feels like it's wrong and that the familiar is not able to do that. But you can be hard as nails. So your defense can go to a d8. You can have marksmanship. Your range skill can go to a d8. And your martial training can go to a d8 as well. So they go from 5, 6, 7, 8 if you increased all of those. You can buy weapons. A service pistol, it's a 12-inch range gun. A rifle, a 24-inch range gun for 2 shillings. A dueling saber, 2 attacks in melee for 1 shilling. And then a claymore, 3 attacks in melee for 2 shillings. And finally, a mount. Their movement goes to 10 inches, and their base size goes up from 32 to 40 to 50, basically. And you have to have 1 wizard, no more, no less. And your special rule is Paragon of the College. Wizards increase their stats as if empowered for their chosen faction at no additional cost. They may still be empowered during the game. So, you get, like, when your faction special rule says empowered, it'll tell you what gets increased. These guys get it all the time, but they don't get, they get to add the bonus on top of it later on if they want. Basically, their faction rule is whatever stats are empowered by giving a unit a piece of magical rock, you just get that all the time. And then generic units, a slogger, like a foot trooper, a scrapper. These are like your melee guys. So sloggers are dudes who have like rifles. Scrappers are dudes who have like clubs and stuff, like trench breachers. Dragoons on horseback. An arcane engine. This is like you have the aethermatic artificery to fire this thing. It's like you have a wand battery, 3 attacks at 24 inches. And then they can exchange the wand battery for imbued staves or erudite conductors, and can take a plow for 3 attacks in melee. This thing's a hulking behemoth. The model may never hunker down and may never claim the benefits of cover, but it may still be hidden. So this is like think of like the Celestial Hurricanum from Warhammer Fantasy Battle. That'd be a good example of an arcane engine on an 80 to 100 mil base. And the last generic one's a field gun, like a arcane artillery piece. A clatter gun, a caliburn, alchemical munitions. You can also change its move to 4 inches by giving it a draft piece. And then core spells. These are the spells anybody can do no matter what their faction is. Cost you a charge for a crackle bolt. 4 dice, 12-inch range. You need to defend with your willpower. An arcane barrier. Target models within 6 inches is treated as if in cover for the duration of the turn. And then it basically stacks with regular cover. So your defense goes from like 1 dice to 2 dice up. Shatter Pulse, you remove a barricade. Meteor Shower, 24-inch range, 4 dice, targets willpower. And then Seismic Catalyst, select a piece of terrain anywhere in the battlefield for the duration of the game. It's considered to be troublesome. And so anybody can use these units, including the wizard, which you have to have. Our factions, the Abjurers, and remember there's a bunch of different colleges here, so I'm going to go through a couple just to give you an idea of what they're like. They have special units they can take, and then they also get bonuses. So their heraldic animal is a tortoise, and empowered units increase their melee and willpower by 1. So the wizard's willpower can't go higher than 12, but his melee can go up by 1 to a d8 automatically. So good at fighting. They get a bulwark. Think of like the Onion Knight from Dark Souls, right? This like big dude in armor. 6-inch move, D10 melee, D6 range, D10 willpower, defense 10. You have a cudgel, a hammer, grenades. And then moving wall, models are considered being covered behind a barricade if a bulwark is blocking their line of sight. And their unique spell is repulsion for an erudite charge. Select a friendly enemy or select a model within 12 and move them 8 inches directly away from the casting wizard. If the targeted model is an enemy, they can resist with a willpower check. If the spell moves the model up the board edge, they must make a treacherous terrain test. And then other examples, the diviners, their ranged and willpower go up by 1. And remember, you can do this to any unit just by giving them an erudite at the start of the turn to like jack them up. They get a seer with like a long rifle. So it's like a wizard sniper, basically. Their unique spell is a portent. You can have to resist the power using willpower, but the defense is decreased by 2 with portents. Because you curse somebody and be like, they're going to die. Druids, their movement goes up because they ride their magical animals. They can regenerate, and they have a feral familiar. Evoker's got a firebrand with like pistols and hammers, some weird like flamethrower dude. And then they get Cinder Shot as their special spell. Their range and melee skills go up by 1. We got Geomancers with some earth magic. The Golem Core for making weird golems, which are very powerful but very slow. A mechanist who can make a steam titan. It's what's his name from Full Metal Alchemist. It's the Full Metal Alchemist kid, making himself a robot brother. We get necromancers. Yeah, you get the gist of that. Paladins, who are kind of good guys. Giant cleavers, storm callers, use weather magic, and that's all the different various sub factions. And then finally the appendix with some great looking miniatures all done up here. We've got some great stuff by Saint Decent. And, of course, some Knucklebones. Lots of our great friends from Bestiarum in here. So lots of great art represented. And lots of cool things that you could just like kit bash to in these Wargames Atlantic plastics. And that's it. So, yeah, just a nice color section here. I love the flying tooth monsters. It's so weird and cool. Bunch of like weird Reaper monsters. And then a training training scenario with some examples to play with and a quick ref. Roster sheets, and that's it. We did it. AETHERPUNK28, a super fun. If you like, so games that would pair well with this would be games like Sludge, Turnip 28, any of those like kind of grim, dark wizarding games, I think would be absolutely perfect model collections that you may already have to play this sort of like weird end of the world style wizarding game. And again, this is a pay what you want game. So you've got a whole bunch of, I think there's like 8 factions, all with their own unique units and creatures. There's a bunch of expansions for this as well. So if you were to go back to Wargames Vault, I think you can find there's a Christmas special that you can check out, which is kind of neat. This is the festive mission pack for the additional missions. Again, pay what you want. There's Aether Tonks, which I think is the tank edition here. This book contains rules and tables to play games of Tonks set in the world of AETHERPUNK28, and all kinds of various other fun little add-ons. A fan-made supplement for playing multiplayer tank-to-tank kerfuffles in the world of AETHERPUNK28. So lots of additional stuff to dig into. And again, if you just have a cool wizard and like kind of weird, grim, dark, like you could play this with fantasy miniatures, like Warhammer Fantasy Battle miniatures. You could play this with Age of Sigmar miniatures. There's a ton of model collections you can already play this with. And I do feel like the model ranges out there are pretty exciting as far as like the stuff we saw showcased. So a lot of cool, neat 3D printable stuff out there as well. So that's it. AETHERPUNK28, another indie game picked by patrons. Now, if you want to pick next week's game, and if you're watching this, you're probably watching this as the next game has been picked and is being recorded. You can take part live. Yeah, we've got all kinds of people in the chat right now. Ryan Duffy saying, "Oh yeah, hell yeah, Dark Sun," and Matt says it's like Sludge. Matt says, "Harvest the root tree," and then Captain Red says, "Sounds like another Trench Crusade killer, maybe." And then Matt says, "That illustration with the male dude is my kind of weird." And Ryan also approves of the dice system. Yeah, a scaling dice system is pretty popular. We've seen it in a bunch of other games where you're, instead of having a number for your stat, you just have dice that get bigger and smaller, and then a standard locked to hit number. Where the bigger the dice, the lower that number is in the dice value, the increased odds you have of actually hitting it. It's a nice, unique system for, well, not unique, but it's a nice common system for replacing tables. Instead of having a table of like what you need to roll and having that number get better based on your training level, just have the same number to hit all the time and have the dice get bigger is like a clever way of like handling that. And with like everybody having polyhedral dice sets, you know, between D4 and D12 in a D&D dice set, it's pretty easy to get your hands on and pretty common to play with. So yeah, there we go. Lots of AETHERPUNK there. And I do recommend you check it out. Again, it's pay what you want. So toss a couple bucks there to Jack. And yeah, thank him for his fun work writing something. So you can get in on the vote for next week's game if you're on Patreon right now. And we'll have that posted up. I will be at Adepticon this past weekend as you're watching this live on YouTube, the current upcoming weekend for the patrons watching this live right now. And I hope to catch some of you there. If I didn't, yeah, come up and say hi. next time next year. And if you're watching this live on Patreon, of course, you're a patron, so come say hi to me anyway. Bother me as much as you want. You're not bothering me, but come find me and just hassle me as much as you want and tell me what you want to see next on GMG. So big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more indie hours in the future. I'm Ash. Bye.